bless you. I'm Dr. Kenneth L. Samuel, pastor of Victory for the World Church. I want to welcome you to our continuing Bible study series. We are in the book of Genesis and going back to the future. I am so happy to be with you on this evening, and I want to give opportunity for those of you that are going to be joining me to sign in. We're grateful to God for another day. Grateful to God for another opportunity to come together to study God's living word. And we pray that God would bless us as we seek better understanding of the living word of God on this evening. Sister Margie Bell is with us, and we're glad you're with us, Sister Margie Bell. We'll wait for a few others who are coming on board to join us as well. But glad to see those of you that are signing in. Sister Dorothy Hughes, thank God for you. Good evening to you. We've got a few others who are coming on board, I think. We'll give them a few more minutes to sign in. Give them a few more minutes to sign in. Sister Gloria Stanley, glad you're with us on this evening. My glasses. Okay. Sister Gloria Stanley is with us. And we'll wait for just a few others to come on board, hopefully on this evening. Sister Ann Stevens. Okay, we're going to go on ahead and get started on this evening, and I'm thinking that others will be joining us shortly. Let's begin tonight with prayer. Gracious God, for another day, we give you praise for the opportunity to study your living word. We are truly grateful. We ask that you would open our hearts and open our minds so that we can not only be hearers of your word, but doers of your word. Help us to make the appropriate and necessary applications of your truth to our daily lives, our daily. Bless us and be with us as only you can. And we thank you for your goodness and your living word. In Jesus' name, amen. So on tonight, I'm going to pick up in Genesis 26. Genesis 26 is where I want to go. Let me see. If you are joining me, please go with me to Genesis. Let me just make sure that the 26 is where I want to go. Yeah, I want to go to the end of Genesis 26, actually. The end of Genesis 26. And we have just finished talking last week about the pact, the treaty that Isaac was able to make with the people in Canaan who were hostile to his presence and his posterity, to the extent that they poured dirt into the wells that Isaac's father Abraham had dug, because as we were talking last week, water is premium in the desert. And so these wells dug by Abraham's servants are now passed on to Abraham's son, Isaac. And Isaac is having a hard time with the native people who are just hostile to his being there. And as I say often, the Israelites believed that God had promised to give them the promised land. But that didn't mean that the inhabitants of the promised land were going to just roll over and let them take it. And Isaac is not necessarily fighting for any land. He is just basically trying to survive with his family and his flocks and his household. And of course, water is needed in the desert. But he's having a hard time with that. We talked about that on last week. This last verse in Genesis 26 is what I really want to call your attention to as we begin on this evening. So Genesis chapter 26, and I want to read verse 34. Genesis chapter 26 and verse 34. And I'm going to read from the New International Version of the Bible this evening. It says, when Esau was 40 years old, he married Judith, daughter of Beeri the Hittite. Okay, Esau, of course, being a son of Isaac, um, Isaac and Rebekah were the parents of Esau, Isaac and Rebekah, and Esau is their firstborn son, and we're going to continue to talk about his forfeiting his birthright and his regret. But just calling your attention to verse 34 of Genesis 26. Esau was 40 years old. He married Judith, the daughter of Beeri the Hittite, and also Basemath, the daughter of Elon the Hittite. They were a source of grief to Isaac and Rebekah. And I highlight that to say how important it was for Abraham and his sons, Isaac, and Isaac's sons, Esau and Jacob. It was important for all of them, particularly Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, to understand that the covenant meant that they really had to stay within the covenant, not only in terms of remaining on the land, right? Because we just read last week about how Isaac decided to flee the promised land because of another famine that hit the area. He was stopped by God from going down into Egypt, which is what his father Abraham had done. But the covenant meant not only staying on the land, the covenant also meant marrying and producing children that would also honor the covenant, the promise that God had given to Abraham and Abraham's descendants. And the covenant line goes through Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Isaac was not the firstborn, keep in mind, it was Ishmael. Jacob was not the firstborn, keep in mind, the firstborn was Esau. And that tells us that God blesses whomever God wants to bless. And those whom God bless don't necessarily fit tradition or fit the cultural expectation. Because according to culture and tradition and expectation, the blessing of Abraham, which is the covenant that God made with Abraham, that's the blessing that included property, posterity, and promise. We've reviewed that several times. But that should have been passed on through the firstborn son. And in both of these cases, in Abraham's case, where he really loved Ishmael and probably would have given the blessing to Ishmael, but that was not God's plan. God's plan was that it would come through Abraham and Sarah, and Isaac was born, of course, after Ishmael. And so the blessing, the covenant skipped the one that tradition said it should have gone to and went to Isaac instead of Ishmael, even though Ishmael is the older brother. Same case with same case with Isaac's sons, Esau and Jacob, the twins. All right, the blessing should have gone to Esau, the firstborn. He was the firstborn twin, rather than to rather than to Jacob, Isaac's second-born son, Jacob. The blessing should have gone to Esau instead of to Jacob. But again, God does not follow the tradition. God is not bound to what we call protocol, cultural protocol, as you will, the way things should be done according to precedent. God is not bound to any of that. God blesses whom God wills. And that whole skipping of the firstborn to give the blessing to the secondborn is God's way of letting us know that favor is not fair. God's favor is not fair, but it's also not dependent upon culture and tradition. And that's good news for those of us who don't always enjoy the blessings of the firstborn, or the first ones who got there, or the first ones to cross the finish line. I mean, there are all kind of meanings we can attach to being first and the benefits that accrue to the first. But God isn't caught up in that. As a matter of fact, God says, I'll take the last and make the last first and the first last. Um, by the way, you should know where that scripture is. The first shall be last, the last shall be first. Let me just find it since we're talking about it. So you'll know where it is. The first shall be last. Matthew 20 and 16. Go there with me, please. Matthew 20 and 16. I'm just reading this from the King James Version, Matthew 20:16. So the last shall be first, and the first shall be last. For many are called, but few are chosen, says Matthew 20:16. Back to Genesis now. I'm making the point that God is not bound to culture, tradition, protocol, or precedent when God decides to bless. God blesses, God uses, God chooses whomever God wants to bless and choose. And in the case of the covenant of Abraham being descendant down to Abraham's descendants, we discover that both firstborns are skipped. All right, as I've said, Abraham's firstborn was Ishmael, not Isaac, but the blessing passed through Isaac. Isaac became the inheritor of Abraham's promise from God. Isaac's firstborn was not Jacob, but Esau. And again, the blessing, God chooses to bless the secondborn instead of the first. God chooses to make the last first and the first last. In both of these instances, I think you get my point there. So back to Genesis. We're now moving to Genesis 27. We're now moving to Genesis chapter 27. And again, I'm still in the NIV. When Isaac was old and his eyes were so weak that he could no longer see, he called for Esau, his older son, and said to him, my son, again, Esau, the oldest son, and says, my son. And we've already discussed that Isaac had a special fondness for Esau because Esau was a hunter and Esau could kill the wild game and cook it and bring it back to his father Isaac. And Isaac loved Esau because of that. Not necessarily the best reason to love a child because of what a child can do for you, but this is a dysfunctional family, and we can all learn from this family in the Bible because our family reflects elements and notes of this family. This family is kind of endemic of all families, the dysfunction in all families, that some children are loved not for who they are, but because of what they produce, whether it be grades or whether it be the service that they render to the parent. It could be money, but it could be a number of things that make that child favored over other children. And that's really what the problem is, favored over other children because of what the child can do. And in Isaac's case, he did love Esau because Esau was able to hunt and produce the wild game. Now, Rebekah, Isaac's wife and mother of Esau and Jacob, favored Jacob, maybe because Jacob helped her more around the house. Jacob was not a hunter like Esau. And so, for various reasons, she favored Jacob instead of Esau. But these favoritisms from both parents, from both Isaac and Rebekah, set off some real problems in the family, as we've been talking these last few weeks about how favoritism produces havoc, confusion, a lot of resentment in families because some children feel neglected, feel subjugated, feel left out for various reasons, while other children are favored. And when it becomes so obvious that one child is loved and adored and treated so much better than another children because for whatever reason, that causes real problems among siblings, among their children. I mean, it's crazy what happens when these kind of rivalries infest and contaminate the family unit. But it was set off by Isaac and Rebekah. The parents did it. Parents do a lot of damage that children pay for decades. Parents do a lot of damage that children pay for decades. So Isaac calls his oldest son Esau. Here I am, Esau answered. Verse 2, Isaac said, I am now an old man and don't know the day of my death. Isaac is believed to be about 100 years old by this time. He says, I don't know the day of my death. So he's up there. Now then, get your equipment, your quiver and bow, and go out to the open country to hunt some wild game for me. Prepare me the kind of tasty food I like and bring it to me to eat so that I may give you my blessing before I die. Now, at this particular point, keep in mind that Esau has already sold his birthright to his brother, Jacob, for a bowl of porridge, lentil soup, lentil stew. He's already given up the promise, the posterity, the property, the birthright for some stew, for immediate gratification, as we would say, immediate gratification, and he gives up an eternal blessing, which we often do. Because we don't recognize, whenever you don't recognize the value of what you have in God, you'll easily give it away. Like your integrity, like you'll compromise your character, like you'll subject yourselves to things that degrade the sense of who you are, all for immediate pleasure and gratification. And it's really tragic. So Esau has already sold his birthright for a bowl of lentil soup or lentil stew. Now comes the blessing. Now you got the birthright, which is the promise, right? God's promise, God's property, God's posterity in the covenant that God made with Abraham. The blessing was, if you will, the formal conveyance of the birthright. So you got the birthright, but then you got the blessing, which is a kind of the ceremony, if you will, that solidifies the transferal of the birthright, the blessing, the blessing. And so even though God has already told both Isaac and Rebekah that the second born son, Jacob, would be the inheritor of Abraham's covenant, Abraham's promise, that the second born son, not Esau. Isaac apparently still wanted to give the blessing and therefore the birthright to Esau and not Isaac. Excuse me, to Esau and not Jacob. Isaac really wanted to give that blessing to Esau in much the same way, if you will recall, that Abraham wanted to give the blessing of his inheritance to Ishmael and not Isaac. Abraham wanted to do the same thing, and God had to tell Abraham, no, that's not the way it's going to work. This blessing is coming through a child that you and Sarah will have. And even though you already have a son, Ishmael, that is not the line through which the covenant will be passed on. But Abraham really, really loved Ishmael. You know, if you recall, Abraham only sent Ishmael and Ishmael's mother Hagar away at Sarah's insistence. If Sarah had not insisted, Ishmael and Hagar would probably never have been sent away into the desert after Abraham and Sarah used Hagar in such a way to produce a child. Now we have Abraham's son, Isaac, again determined to give the birthright to his oldest child, whom he happens to favor, for the wild game. And but of course, God had already told them. God had already told both. God had already told Rebecca that the second born, that Jacob would be the favored one, that Jacob would be the one through whom the blessing would pass in so many ways. So it's found in Genesis 25 and 30, 25 and 30, 30, 25 and 23, if I can get my words out of my mouth correctly. Look there with me again, Genesis 25 and 23 is where I want to go. Genesis 25 and 23. The Lord said to her, that is to Rebecca, are you with me? In Genesis 25, 23, the Lord said to her, two nations are in your womb, because this is obviously a difficult pregnancy, and there's wrestling of the children in the womb. Two nations are in your womb, and two peoples from within you will be separated. One people will be stronger than the other, and the older will serve the younger. There it is. So that is the what do you call that? That is the that's the prophecy. That's the prophecy that God gives to Rebecca. I'm sure she shared that with Isaac and with Jacob. And by the way, because God had already told her that, there was no need for Rebecca and Jacob to plot and scheme to steal the birthright, to steal the blessing. They both plotted and schemed. Well, they plotted and schemed to steal the blessing. Jacob stole the birthright from Esau, but there was no need for any of that, because God had already promised to give it to Jacob instead of Esau. The older will serve the younger. That was clear indication that the blessing of Abraham's promise, posterity, property, the leadership of the household, all of that would pass through the younger son, not the firstborn. Now, if God has already promised it, then why do you have to lie, cheat, and steal to get it? And I think the question that we have to ask, if God is our provider, if God is our shepherd, as we say God is, then what reason do we have to be underhanded, to be dishonest, to be deceptive when it comes to getting what we want in life? How can you say God is my shepherd and yet you're a thief, a swindler? A conniving thief. How can God be your shepherd if you are utilizing all these underhanded means to get what you want in life? So obviously you don't believe God. And the Lord is my shepherd are just words coming out of your mouth that mean absolutely nothing. Because if God is your shepherd, you trust God. But if you're just talking and you really don't believe that, then you resort to all these underhanded means to get what you want in life. And that's precisely, back to Genesis 26 now, that's precisely what Rebecca and Jacob do. They deceive and lie to get what they want, even though God had already promised to give it to them. And by the way, they pay for it. They pay for it. And I'm going to talk about how they pay for it in just a minute. But let me get back to the text. Where am I? I'm Genesis 26 or 27. No. I'm going to Genesis 27. Genesis 27 is where I was. So let's go back there, please. So Isaac tells his oldest son Esau, go out, hunt me some wild game, fix it for me, come back, I'm going to bless you. Even though God has already told me that the blessing is coming through Jacob, but I'm going to bless you because I like you. 5. I'm in Genesis 27 and verse 5. Now Rebekah was listening as Isaac spoke to his son Esau. When Esau left for the open country to hunt game and bring it back, Rebekah said to her son Jacob, her favorite son, "Look, I overheard your father say to your brother Esau, bring me some game and prepare me some tasty food to eat, so that I may give you my blessing in the presence of the Lord before I die." Again, that's the formal rite or the formal ceremony for the passing on of Abraham's inheritance, which in this case is the covenant. So Rebekah tells that to Jacob. And in verse 8, she says to Jacob, "Now my son, listen carefully and do what I tell you. Go out to the flock and bring me 2 choice young goats so I can prepare some tasty food for your father just the way he likes it. Then take it to your father to eat so that he may give you his blessing before he dies." Jacob said to Rebekah, his mother, "But my brother Esau is a hairy man, while I have smooth skin. What if my father touches me? I would appear to be tricking him and would bring down a curse on myself rather than a blessing," which is precisely what happened because he went through with Rebekah's scheme. His mother said to him, "My son, let the curse fall on me. Just do what I say. Go and get them for me." And even though she says that, she doesn't realize that both she and her son, Jacob, will pay dearly for this deception. So he went, that is, Jacob went and got them and brought them to his mother, and she prepared some tasty food just the way his father liked it. Then Rebekah, I'm in verse 15, Genesis 27. Then Rebekah took the best clothes of Esau, her son, which she had in the house, and put them on her younger son, Jacob. She also covered his hands and the smooth part of his neck with the goat skins. Then she handed to her son Jacob the tasty food and the bread she had made. He went to his father and said, "My father." "Yes, my son," he answered. "Who is it?" Jacob said to his father, "I am Esau, your firstborn." Lies. "I have done as you told me. Please sit up and eat some of my game so that you may give me your blessing." Lies. More lies. Isaac asked his son, "How did you find it so quickly, my son?" A little bit suspicious because it happened so quick. You keep in mind that Esau had to go hunt the game, right? Kill the game, clean the game, cook the game, prepare the game, and bring it to his father. Whereas all Rebekah did was just dress, Jacob up in Esau's clothing and, cook some food. She didn't hunt for anything. She just had it made up and made it taste the way Esau would have. Let me see. Isaac asked his son, "How did you find it so quickly, my son?" "The Lord your God gave me success," he replied. You're going to lie on God too. More lies. 21. Then Isaac said to Jacob, "Come near so I can touch you, my son, to know whether you really are my son Esau or not." 22. Jacob went close to his father Isaac, who touched him and said, "The voice is the voice of Jacob, but the hands are the hands of Esau." You're so blind that you really cannot discern between the voice of your sons. That's really blind. You're not only blind, you're just about deaf as well. Because, I don't know, do you think you could discern if you were blindfolded? You think you could discern somewhat the difference between two people's voices? In this case, Isaac is so blinded, I want to say, by his own greed. Because maybe if he loved Esau for for who Esau was instead of what Esau could produce. He would have spent more time with Esau and gotten to know who Esau really was. I mean, you got to be more than blind to the extent that somebody can put on somebody else's clothes. And I don't know. I don't know about that. Put on somebody else's clothes and you can't tell the difference. And of course, he touches Jacob, and Jacob is wearing Esau's clothes. And his mother is shrewd enough that she, puts, well, let's just see. The hands of Esau. She prepares the bread. Oh, here it is, verse 16. And still in Genesis 27, Rebekah also covered his hands and the smooth part of his neck with the goat skins. That's deep. That's deep, that you really cannot tell. Wow. That would be interesting. How many of us, if we could not see, could really tell the difference? And I want to say that Isaac didn't spend enough time with Esau to really be able to tell the difference, because his love for Esau was based on Esau's productivity, not on Esau's personhood. And whenever you base it on productivity, you don't really know the person, but you know what they can produce. That's what your focus is on. And so it's tragic that the father Isaac is able to be deceived so roundly this way by his own family, by his own sons, because he doesn't know them. But apparently Rebekah knows him, and she knows well enough how to fool him or how to deceive him, and Jacob goes along with it. 22, Jacob went close to his father Isaac, who touched him and said, "The voice is the voice of Jacob, but the hands are the hands of Esau." So he did discern the voice. Should have been a trigger right there. Because the voice, right, tells a lot, especially if you can't see the voice. But the voice is the voice of Jacob, but the hands are the hands of Esau. He did not recognize him, for his hands were hairy like those of his brother Esau. So he proceeded to bless him. Now, what's going on here? You know the voice is not right, so something is amiss. Maybe you don't know your sons that well. And maybe he was so unsuspecting of his wife that he didn't know her and his other son that well either. Because, part of the reason why people get duped is that we don't suspect it to come from certain people. But if you know certain people, if you really know them, you're more on guard, especially when things don't seem right. And in the case of the voices, the voice of this person not matching the voice of Esau, that should have been a big red flag. It should have been enough to halt the whole process, right? Because you don't know your son, apparently. You don't know your wife, apparently, to know that your wife, Rebekah, is capable of this kind of deceit. What do you think? Do you think that somebody you have known in your family, somebody you've known for a while, can deceive you and you be completely in the dark about it? Are people that slick? Are they that convincing? Or does God give us clues to people's character long before they decide to really try to get us? I'm of the opinion, my opinion. I'd like to hear yours. Also, that's when I asked for it at the end of Bible study, because I want you to be thinking about this, right? How possible is that? Have you ever been deceived by somebody that you had no clue, that you were totally surprised? And have you ever thought back and asked, were there any clues given to you concerning that person's character? Now, there are certain people that I would swear on under oath that certain people would not do certain things. If I were in court and I was a character witness, I would say no. There's nothing about anything that I know or have seen or have experienced with this person that would make me think that they would ever do something like that willfully. Now, they might have been tricked, they might have been duped, they might have been under the influence of something or someone, but willfully, no. But there are other people that I know. I would not give that testimony because honestly, based on what I have seen, based on what I have observed, those people are capable of just about anything. I just might as well be honest. You might as well be honest with yourself too, because this will help you from getting your feelings hurt and getting your money taken and getting your stuff jacked up too. There's certain people you can vouch for. Other people, I don't know. I don't know. I ain't saying they did it, but at the same time, I ain't saying they didn't do it. Because this person has the kind of character that can, as far as I know, that can go either way. You know, they nice, but they kind of nice, nasty. You know, they are honest to an extent when it, suits them. But I've seen them in situations where they lied to get out of stuff. So that's letting me know you can't put anything past those people. And it's not saying that they did it, but it's not also saying that they didn't do it. Can you live with somebody and be completely surprised when they do something? I don't know. I don't know about that. My point, I guess my point I'm trying to make is that Isaac didn't know his family. He didn't know the kind of woman he was living with. That Rebecca, because, anytime you come up with a scheme like this and it's that intricate and that conniving, it's probably not the first time you pull something, right? People who do, people who lie, cheat, kill, steal, there are indications that they're headed in that direction. They have given indications. The whole debate in America today is about people being released on bond that should not be released on bond because their record indicates that these are dangerous people. And, it's one thing, if somebody commits, a felony and people say, oh my goodness, where'd that come from? Nobody can believe it because, that is just so out of that person's character. So they know something must be amiss. But when a person has a history of lying, when a person has a history of being deceptive, when a person has tried several times but didn't get away with it, but finally they get away with it, that ought not be a shock to anybody. I mean, we're sorry, but that was them. It was bound to catch up with them sooner or later. And I'm one, with these people with these violent records, what are they doing out on the street? Especially when, the police and the authorities know that this person is a risk, a threat to society because they've proven that they have no regard, no respect for other people's lives. They've proven that. Maybe not to the point of killing someone, but they lie, they cheat, they accuse of all kind of other violence. They assaulted people. The assault could have turned deadly at any moment. So why are these people still out on the street? All right, let me bring it home. Why are we still trusting people that God has already showed us that they are untrustworthy? And then we get our feelings hurt because they act true to who they are. And how is it that they can be that devious and that deceptive and we live with them and have no clue? How can Isaac knows something's going on. The voice is Jacob's, but the skin is Esau's. Okay, well, something ain't matching up. See, if he was paying attention to the person he lived with, he would have said, I wonder if Rebecca got anything to do with this. Since I know that Jacob is her favorite son. Now, he had his favorite as well, but he didn't lie to steal a blessing. He was just going to give it contrary to what God told him would happen. So there's all kind of, everybody, there's nobody completely innocent in this whole scenario. And they all pay for it. But, Maya Angelou says that when people show you who they are, what? Believe them. There's no point in getting shocked. Just believe them. Now, it doesn't mean that you have to curse them out and never speak to them again. That doesn't mean that. It just means that you understand who they are, and you have a file, and you say, okay, I'm just going to keep my eyes open and keep watching. And people will eventually prove who they really are. And we can save ourselves a lot of hurt by just paying attention and believing who people tell us that they are. I don't know. You may have an opinion about it, but I just think that it is very, very unfortunate that Isaac could live with these people and yet not know any of them, family members, and yet not know them, not know what they're capable of. Not know the depth of their willingness, not knowing what they're willing to do to get what they want. There are some people we know they will do anything to get what they want. If it means lying, they'll do it. If it means cheating, they'll do it. If it means stealing, they'll do it. To the extent that a person like that, death is the obvious next step. Now, I'm not saying that all thieves are killers, but I'm just saying once you get into the deception business, and once you start the lying, then as the old folks say, well, then I don't know what to believe now, because you're basically a liar. You're a deceiver. Can you live with someone in your family and not know that they are prone to lying? That they are prone to fabrication for their own benefit? I don't understand how this is a big shock to Isaac, how he could be deceived like this, especially when the red flag was there. It's not the voice of Esau. It's not even Esau's voice. So you're so that hungry for food, this wild game, that you're going to overlook that and just keep going. By the way, that's reminiscent of Esau, his son. Esau had his eyes wide open when he sold his birthright to Jacob. And Esau, how is it that you don't know your brother Jacob? How is it that you don't know that Jacob will do anything to get what he wants? Just about. This is real curious. Real curious to me. Let's read on in the story. Let me see. Back to verse 22 in Genesis 27. Jacob went to his father Isaac, who touched him and said, the voice is the voice of Jacob, but the hands are the hands of Esau. Right there, he should have backed up and said, something's not right here. But instead, verse 23, he did not recognize him, for his hands were hairy like those of his brother Esau. So he proceeded to bless him. Okay, but now you know it ain't Esau, but you just want to eat. So you're just going to bless it anyway. You're going to bless him anyway. Are you really my son Esau, he asks. See, you got to ask those kind of questions. That's enough reason to pause and think and pray before you proceed. If you got to stop and ask those kind of questions, are you really my son? Are you lying to me? So maybe he did know his son, and his wife. because there's certain people you don't have to do that much investigation to find out if they're lying to you because you know them. Are you really my son Esau? I am, Jacob replied. He done already lied. He done already said God gave him the meat. It's just one in a series of lies. And this lie comes again in the voice of one who is not Esau. 25. Then he, that is Isaac, said, my son, bring me some of your game to eat so that I may give you my blessing. See, that's the problem right there. You're trying to eat, and nothing wrong with eating. But you can't be so blinded by your hunger that you can't see reality. Like Esau, you can't be so blinded by your hunger that you give up the birthright. So it shows that you don't know what you have. You don't recognize it. You don't appreciate it. So that's why you lost it. And now this is playing out again through Isaac's blind greed. Jacob brought it to him and he ate. And he brought some wine and he drank. 26. Then his father Isaac said to him, come here, my son, and kiss me. He didn't even call him Esau. So he went to him and kissed him. When Isaac caught the smell of his clothes, he blessed him. Okay, so it smells like Esau because Rebekah has put Esau's clothes on Jacob. So I guess 2 out of 3 ain't bad. Smells like him, feels like him, but it doesn't sound like him. I don't know, you put 2 and 2 together. It seemed like the sound would have been the most important, a person's voice. But, when you're blinded by your hunger, you miss all that. We can be so blinded by our hunger that we miss the telltale signs that something is amiss, something's wrong, something's not right, something's not adding up. But you're blinded, so you just go on. The smell of my son is like the smell of a field that the Lord has blessed. May God give you heaven's dew and earth's richness, an abundance of grain and new wine. May nations serve you and people bow down to you. Be Lord over your brothers, and may the sons of your mother bow down to you, which means your siblings. May those who curse you be cursed, and may those who bless you be blessed. After Isaac finished blessing him, and Jacob had scarcely left his father's presence, his brother Esau came in from hunting. He too prepared some tasty food and brought it to his father. Then he said to him, my father, please sit up and eat some of my game so that you may give me your blessing. His father Isaac asked him, who are you? I am your son, he answered, your firstborn Esau. Isaac trembled violently and said, who was it then that hunted game and brought it to me? I ate it just before you came, and I blessed him. And indeed, he will be blessed. So apparently, once the blessing is given, it cannot be retracted or rescinded. When Esau heard his father's words, he burst out with a loud and bitter cry and said to his father, bless me too, my father. Oh, so now he recognizes what he had and gave up. But he said, your brother came deceitfully and took your blessing. Esau said, isn't he rightly named Jacob? Jacob means he grasps the heel, a Hebrew idiom for he takes advantage of or he deceives. So Jacob, the deceptive one. Isn't he rightly named Jacob? This is the second time he has taken advantage of me. He took my birthright. Well, no, he didn't take it. You gave it to him for a bowl of lentil stew. He's taken my birthright, and now he's taken my blessing. Well, yeah, he did that because his father was blinded by the same hunger that you were blinded by when you gave up the blessing and the birthright. Then he asked, haven't you reserved any blessing for me? Isaac answered Jacob, I have made him lord over you, and have made all his relatives his servants, and I have sustained him with grain and new wine. So what can I possibly do for you, my son? Esau said to his father, do you have only one blessing, my father? Bless me too, my father. Then Esau wept aloud. Esau, regretful, sorrowful, but it's a bit late because the deed has been done. Not so much by his father, because his father was just the ritual or the rite of passing on the birthright. But the real birthright had already been given up by the firstborn, Esau, for a bowl of lentil soup or lentil stew. His father Isaac answered him, your dwelling will be away from the earth's richness, away from the dew of heaven above. You will live by the sword and you will serve your brother. So these are going to be nomadic people who travel, always traveling, no set designated home. They just are wanderers, nomads, if you will. So your dwelling will be away from the earth's richness, away from the dew of heaven. In other words, out in the desert where resources are scarce. You will live by the sword, which means that you're going to have to fight for your survival. You're going to be very violent. And you will serve your brother, Jacob. But when you grow restless, you will throw his yoke off your neck, which means that there will be fighting between you, as had been predicted by God, two nations at war. But eventually the older would serve the younger. But here, Isaac is saying that eventually you'll be able to liberate yourself from your brother's domination. Esau held a grudge against Jacob because of the blessing his father had given him. He said to himself, the days of mourning for my father are near. That is, the days of mourning after Isaac's death were coming, and I will kill my brother Jacob. I'll just wait until, the days of mourning for my father are past, and then I'll kill my brother. When Rebekah was told what her older son Esau had said, she sent for her younger son Jacob and said to him, your brother Esau is planning to avenge himself by killing you. Now then, my son, do what I say. Flee at once to my brother Laban in Haran. Stay with him for a while until your brother's fury subsides. Notice for a while. She thought it would only be a few weeks, maybe a few months. When your brother is no longer angry with you and forgets what you did to him, I'll send word for you to come back from there. Why should I lose both of you in one day? Then Rebekah said to Isaac, well, let me just stop right at the end of 45. Well, let me just go on to 46. Then Rebekah said to Isaac, her husband that she had deceived, I'm disgusted with living because of these Hittite women, that is the local women in Canaan. If Jacob takes a wife from among the women of this land, from Hittite women like these, my life will not be worth living, because presumably if he marries a woman who does not believe in the covenant, then he will be led astray, and so will his children. And so she regrets that. But I want to say that there are no innocent characters here. Let me go on to verse 20 to Genesis 28, and then I'll say a little bit more about that. So Isaac called for Jacob and blessed him. Then he commanded him, do not marry a Canaanite woman. Go at once to Padanaram, which is in present-day Iraq, the same place that Abraham had sent the servant to find a bride for Isaac. But here they're sending Jacob himself, but really because Jacob needs to get out of town because Esau is threatening to kill him. So go at once to Padanaram, to the house of your mother's father, Bethuel. Take a wife for yourself there from among the daughters of Laban, your mother's brother. May God Almighty bless you and make you fruitful and increase your numbers until you become a community of peoples. May he give you and your descendants the blessing given to Abraham, so that you may take possession of the land where you now preside as a foreigner, the land God gave to Abraham, which they still don't possess yet. Then Isaac sent Jacob on his way, and he went to Padan Aram to Laban, son of Bethuel, the Amorian, the brother of Rebekah, who was the mother of Jacob and Esau. So everybody suffers as a result of this, what started out as, a favoritism that, affected the relationship between Jacob and Esau. This rivalry that started in the womb and was exacerbated by the favoritism of Rebekah and Isaac. So Isaac suffers by being deceived by his own family, and that must have been a terrible hurt, by the way. I mean, it's bad enough to be deceived. It's bad enough to, be lied to, but to be lied to by your own family, by your own spouse, by your own children, or your own child, that's hurtful. That's heartbreaking. I mean, that's a deep pain that takes a long time to be relieved, if ever. That's a dagger that always sticks and cuts to the core. The fact that you were deceived, not just by anyone, but by your own family members, your own spouse, your own child, who connived to deceive you. So Isaac suffers. Rebekah suffers because Rebekah had to part company with her beloved son, Jacob. The last thing Rebekah wanted to do was to send Jacob away. But she had to do it in light of Esau's threat. And by the way, she never saw Jacob again in her life. Never. They never reunite. Jacob leaves for Iraq, Padan Aram, to find a bride, allegedly. Well, that may have been a reason, but it was not the main reason that he fled. But eventually he did find a bride there. But Rebekah never planned on him leaving her and never returning. She thought it would be a matter of, a couple of months, maybe a year or two before he would come back. And Jacob stayed in Iraq, Padan Aram, for 20 years. He and his mother were never reunited. Never. So she suffers. The beloved son that she connived and lied to get blessed, she's separated from. Esau suffers because Esau lives to regret his terrible decision to give up his own birthright, and therefore the blessing. Now, an interesting question, if you're really thinking about this with me, and I hope you are, is what would have happened if the blessing had gone to Esau instead of Jacob? What would have happened? Well, I don't know. I mean, the text doesn't tell us. It didn't happen that way. But what would have happened, I think, maybe we can think about it a bit. I think it would have been an empty ritual, because God had already predestined and God had already prophesied that the blessing of the covenant would come through Jacob and not Esau. God had already said that when they were in the womb. So since the blessing was the rite or the ceremony that codified, if you will, that codified, or that's a good word, I guess, codified to, maybe put it in writing, maybe, I don't know, you make it official. Let's just say that. The blessing was only to make the birthright, the passing on of the birthright, official. So if God had already said, I'm going to give it to Jacob and not to Esau, and if Isaac then went on ahead and said, but no, I'm going to give it to Esau instead, because he's my favorite, and after all, he is the firstborn, it would have just been an empty ritual, because rituals cannot reverse God's will, it just would have been an empty ritual. Maybe think about this in the same way that if Abraham had tried to pass the blessing on through Esau, which he did, not through Esau, through Ishmael. If Abraham, who really loved Ishmael, if he had tried to pass the blessing on through Ishmael instead of Isaac, it wouldn't have worked because that was not God's will. But I guess my point is, God's will is going to be done. Whether we like it or not, especially when God prophesies something, that's going to happen. We can like it or not like it. We can do whatever we think we can do to thwart it or to derail it, but it's not going to work because God has all power. And God always has a way of working out God's will aside from what we do as humans. Now, we can cooperate or we cannot cooperate. But when we don't cooperate, we only hurt ourselves. So in this particular case, I think that if Isaac had blessed Esau instead of Jacob, it still would have been empty. It still would have been of no, because keep in mind that a rite or a ceremony only has as much significance as the event or the happening itself, which is to say that it doesn't matter how elaborate a wedding is, spend $1 million on a wedding, spend $1 million or more on it. If two people don't love each other, that means nothing. It was just an elaborate ceremony, an event. People had a good time, they ate well, it was pretty. But it doesn't mean anything because the marriage has no merit because the two people are truly not in love with each other. So the blessing would have been like an elaborate wedding with no love between the two spouses. It would have been a ceremony, but it would have meant nothing because God has already said, this is what I'm going to do. And not only did God say, this is what I'm going to do in terms of giving the blessing to the second-born instead of the firstborn himself has already proven that he doesn't appreciate the inheritance. He doesn't appreciate the covenant. He doesn't appreciate the promise because he gave it all up for some lentil stew. He ain't in love with God like that. He doesn't honor God. He doesn't respect God. He doesn't revere God. He doesn't trust God like that, which is why he got stew instead of the birthright. So it would have been an empty, meaningless ritual. And we know about empty, meaningless rituals. Baptism with no belief, a meaningless ritual. Child dedication when you have no intent of raising the child in church. You bring the baby to be blessed, but as the child grows up, you do nothing to ensure that the child is taught Christian education, that the child is educated concerning the Bible, that the child knows about anything that's spiritual, because all you did was bless the child as a baby, and you did nothing to train the child up in the way that the child should go. So it was a meaningless ritual, meaningless, empty, futile. That would have been the blessing. If Isaac had given the blessing to Esau, it would have been futile. Because Esau had already proven that he was not worthy, that he was, maybe that's a bad word because none of us are worthy, but Esau had already proven that he did not believe God. That's it. Esau had already proven he didn't believe God. He didn't trust God. He didn't honor God. He would have never given up his birthright if he had. Okay. So Jacob is on his way to Padanaram. By the way, 450-mile journey. I think we said earlier that it took 4 months to make. traveling from Israel, ancient Canaan land, to Iraq, Padanaram, ancient Padanaram in Iraq. Verse 6, I'm in Genesis 28. Now Esau learned that Isaac had blessed Jacob and had sent him to Padanaram to take a wife from there, and that when he blessed him, he commanded him, do not marry a Canaanite woman, and that Jacob had obeyed his father and mother and had gone to Padanaram. Esau then realized how displeasing the Canaanite women were to his father Isaac. We just read that. Because they symbolized a lack of faith in the covenant. So he went to Ishmael, his uncle. Just make sure this is right. Yes. Isaac's brother is Ishmael. So Isaac's son Esau, in going to Ishmael, would have been going to his uncle Ishmael, and word to his father. Verse 9. So he went, that is, Esau went to Ishmael and married Mahalath, the sister of Nebaioth and daughter of Ishmael, son of Abraham, in addition to the wives he already had. So he does that to try to appease his parents, who were greatly distressed at the fact that he's marrying these Canaanite women, and thereby indicating his lack of trust and belief in the covenant by these women that he is marrying. So he tries to appease them, but that's empty too. That's to no avail. You know, it's kind of late for that now, right? And that doesn't change anything, other than to show that Esau lives to regret the choices he made concerning giving up his birthright. He lives to regret that. Even though, by the way, he is blessed, he will become himself the father of a great nation, as Ishmael did. Remember, God blessed Ishmael too. And God is going to bless Esau, but the birthright isn't going to come through Esau. The covenant isn't going to be passed down through Esau. But that doesn't mean that Esau is not going to be blessed. He was blessed greatly in terms of material wealth and all. He also was wealthy. But he lives with this regret. And by the way, Jacob also lives with regret, because Jacob is going to have to face, what goes around comes around. And Jacob, who the deceiver, the conniver, well, he himself is going to face a lot of that in his own life as he travels to Padanaram to allegedly find a wife, and he does there in Padanaram, among his kinfolk, among his uncle cousins. He marries a cousin in the same way that Isaac did. But he himself is going to learn humility. He himself is going to learn that lying, cheating, stealing does not pay. But he's going to learn it the hard way. And so I'm going to pick up on the lessons of Jacob that he learns in Padanaram as he flees for his life in Canaan. And I think I want to stop there and hear your questions and your comments. What about this business of, have you ever been shocked, completely blindsided? Have you ever been completely blindsided by somebody that you thought had a certain character, and then you find out that they don't? Or have you found things out about them that only confirm what you've already suspected? Is it possible to be that shocked, or do people give us signals? Are people giving us indications of who they are every day by their actions, their conversation, et cetera, and et cetera? What do you think about that? Can you really live with someone and truly be shocked? Well, of course, if you don't know them, but I mean a spouse, a child, not just living with someone, but a spouse, a child. Can you really be that blindsided by a person's action? Is that possible? Don't all speak at once, by the way. But what do you think about that? Any other questions or comments? What do you think about Isaac blessing Jacob instead of Esau? Is it possible not to know your own children that well? Is it possible to miss that many warning signs? Have you ever been blindsided by something that you just had to have when all the warning signs were there? And then afterwards, you kick yourself and saying all the signs were there. I don't know what I was thinking. Doesn't that happen to many of us? All the signs were there, and yet you miss them. You just go on until it's too late. Sister Bree says, generational deceit, 2 generations, Abraham and I think you mean Ishmael is Ishmael. It's Ishmael, started with an I. Isaac and Rebecca, yeah. Esau and Jacob, it's deceit. But everybody pays for it. And by the way, this is the chosen family of God. So don't ever think that your family is the only family dealing with dysfunction. See, to me, this is liberating. These biblical stories are liberating because they help me to deal with the inconsistencies and the idiosyncrasies and the dysfunctions that I face every day. I mean, everybody has some dysfunction in their family. Like I said, nobody has a perfect family. Even Bill Cosby was not a real Huxtable, right? I mean, nobody lives in a perfectly Huxtable household. You do remember Huxtables, right? Beautiful, perfect family. Too perfect for reality. A little bit too perfect for reality. Because all of us have dealt with some dysfunction and been hurt by it and lived to regret it. When you are angry and traumatized, the eyes are useless when the mind is blind. That's a good point, Sister Turner. Yeah, when you are angry and traumatized, add hungry to that. Because we do know that Isaac wanted that meat. But yeah, so it's not just the blindness of the eyes, it's the blindness of the mind that blinds you to the reality because you are obsessed. You are obsessed by your greed or by your need for physical, material satisfaction. That's a good point. Other comments, questions? Other comments, questions? When somebody shows you who they are, believe them. How many people could you really take the stand and vouch for and say, no, I do not believe with everything in me that they're capable of committing ABC, because you know them that well? Or would it be, I don't know. I hope they didn't do it, but they might have. I suspect there are more people like that we know than people that we would absolutely vouch for. Because there are not many people, I hate to say it, but there are not many people who are consistently honest. There are not that many. I hate to say it, but it's the truth. People are known to lie, known to be deceptive, to save their skin, to get what they want. Like I said, I ain't saying you gotta stop talking to them, but you ought to file that and keep that in mind. You ought to just keep that in mind. This person will lie. This person has been known to be deceptive. Yeah, I don't think things like that come all of a sudden as people don't change their characters. Yeah, people get saved, but then they got to grow into the knowledge of Jesus Christ, and they have to gain the discipline that they need in spiritually to overcome a lot of their former things. And that can happen. I believe that can happen because I believe in redemption, and I do believe that people can change. But it's got to be God, and then the person's got to be willing to change. Your comments, your questions. Our time is just, if you don't have anything else that you want to ask or say. Sister Lily Robinson, I'm not sure, let me just look over here. I'm going to put some of y'all's own stuff up myself. Lily Robinson says, my surprise is coming from how people who are committing crimes in this day and time, so much display of heartless caring. Yeah, that's a good comment. People are committing crimes this day and time, and it is heartless. And you wonder what kind of families raise these people. Now, of course, you can't put it all on the parents, because you can have great parents and lousy kids. And by the way, you can have great kids and lousy parents too. It can go both ways. But I don't know. I agree, Sister Robinson. I think that there is something that is happening today that I don't know would have happened when we were growing up. These access to guns, the fact that people are just literally killing, and where is the respect for life? Where is the reverence? Where is the belief that life is sacred and that you never take what you cannot give back? Where is that? Where is the respect for yourself and for your family, to the extent that certain things you're just not going to do, no matter how crazy you get sometimes? I don't know where all that went. Maybe it happened, but to the extent that it's happening today, you wonder, how are parents really raising children? Do we really know what's going on? Sister Bree King says, what again was Esau's regret? Esau's regret was the giving up of his birthright, his selling it for some lentil porridge. Let me see, Sister Bree King. Some others are like this despite the truth. Yes. Yeah. Sister Bree says again, yeah, Isaac knew it was a lie, but he was ready to eat. And that's the problem. Sister Carol Turner says, people's true character will be revealed. Time reveals all. Yeah, I think there's a lot of truth to that. Yeah. And then also, Sister Lily Robinson says, and I think I'm guilty of this too, I'm guilty of not trusting the signs displayed. I think all of us are guilty of somehow missing the signs, because I would agree with Sister Lily Robinson that, we've been deceived, duped, bamboozled by people. And then we are all hurt and shook up. And then I think the Holy Spirit reminds us, well, I tried to tell you, but you didn't want to pay attention. And all the signs were there, and we ignored them. Because like Isaac, we were bent on doing what we wanted to do anyway. And so we missed all the signs. I think that's very true. Deacon Howard says, I think the Holy Spirit gives us discernment that we sometimes ignore because we just can't believe that certain people would do us wrong. I think that's true. I think that's true. And it is hurtful. It is hurtful to think that particularly people that we're supposed to be close to would deceive us and lie like that. But the truth of the matter is that it happens, and it happens more often than not. And I think that the reason why people are able to get away with so much is precisely because we don't want to believe it. I just don't want to believe it. Okay, well, you don't have to believe it, but you at least need to read the handwriting that's on the wall. You at least need to pay attention to what's said and what's not said. You at least need to discern the voice. And I think that that's, the great asset that people who deceive us have, because they get over on people who always want to think the best of people. I'm one of those people myself. I do like to think the best of people. But when I find out a person's character, like I say, I may not stop speaking to them. I may not do anything that would be nasty to them. But in the back of my mind, I know how far to trust them. I know what to tell them and what not to tell them. I know what to trust them with. And if they are not trustworthy, believe me, I ain't going to trust them with much. See, I'm the kind of person, I can talk to you for 5 hours and say absolutely nothing. People won't come and get information. And I turn it around. I get more information than they get. Because I'm just not, talking is one thing. I can make conversation. I can chit chat. We can have a great time. But that doesn't mean I trust you. It doesn't mean that I think highly of your character. It just means that I'm just being nice because I'm a nice person. But I'm not stupid. I'm not deceived, and I'm not naive. And, part of being naive is to think, oh, they wouldn't do that. No. Trust, but verify. I trust you now. And you give me a reason not to, then I put you in that category. That means I got you under suspicion. As a matter of fact, maybe everybody should be under suspicion, including ourselves, because all of us can do the wrong thing on the wrong day. And so, we just pray that circumstances and our egos and our blind desires don't push us to do certain things. But we thought about things that we didn't do. We didn't do it, but we thought about it, which means that we are capable of it. So maybe we should all trust God, do our best to help others stay honest. Part of that is, if you really want people to be honest with you, is to let them know that, you're going to love them in spite of. They don't have to play a role or play a game to be accepted by you. They don't have to produce a certain thing to be loved by you. You're going to love them anyway. Now, with that, they're more, they're freer than to be themselves. But if they think that, you're going to be so disappointed and, you have this image of them that you just can't shake, well, yeah, then they're more likely to lie to you because they, in their minds, trying not to hurt you, even though they really are, by lying to you. You understand how this, it's a vicious circle. But if you especially children have to know, I'm going to love you regardless. Even if you do that which I'm disappointed in, I'm still going to love. It's not going to stop me from loving you. I may be disappointed, but I'm still going to love you. So don't ever think that you have to fit a role or play a game or tell me lies to be accepted. That's the way I tried to raise my daughter. That whatever, just tell me the truth. Just tell me the truth. Because I'm going to love you anyway. I may be disappointed, but I'm going to love you. Unfortunately, that's not the way all children are raised. Some children are raised thinking that they have to do certain things. They got to produce certain things. They got to walk on certain eggshells to be loved and accepted by their own parents. Yes, by their own parents. And some people, some adults were raised that way, that you only had the acceptance and the approval and the applause of your parent if you met certain expectations. And when you did not meet those expectations, they had no use for you. So yeah, in a situation like that, people are going to lie. Because people, especially, nobody wants to be without a family. So if they got to lie to be accepted, yeah, they're going to lie. Because the family has placed that expectation that we expect this. If we don't get it, you're not loved, you're not valued, you're not appreciated. And some, even get kicked out in so many ways. So we have to also watch how we set the expectations, how we set the parameters that encourage dishonesty. Yes, we set certain context and certain parameters that encourage people to be dishonest. You can put that comment back up again. I'm going to address it. I just wanted to finish my statement. Put that back up again. Yeah, you can set such expectations that people feel that they have to lie in order to be accepted. Or you can say, as I constantly try to say to my daughter, even if you disappoint me, I still love you. So you can tell me the truth. Even if I'm hurt, tell me the truth. I'd rather you just tell me the truth. Just tell me the truth. Because I never have to want to hear anything that you say and wonder, is it the truth? Just tell me the truth. Everybody wasn't raised like that. Now, I know the importance of that, but everybody doesn't recognize the importance of that. And there's no greater rejection than the rejection of a parent. There's no greater rejection than the rejection of a parent. Or when your parents try to live their lives out through you and put such expectations upon you that you can't be yourself because you're so busy trying to please them. And that's not right. That's not fair to the child. And it's going to backfire on the parent eventually. Sister Jessica Mack says, I was raised to see the good in the person. I think we all we do our best to try to see the good in the person, and we should look for the good, give people the benefit of the doubt. That's how I interpret that. Give them the benefit of the doubt. But at the same time, when you show me who you are, there's no point in me saying to myself, that's not who you are, because you've already told me that's who you are. So I just deal with it at that level. I deal with it at that point. You've already shown me. So all of my wishing that you were not who you are is not going to change who you are. So I might as well get with the realistic program and deal with you accordingly. Sister Carol Turner says, is narcissistic behavior a generational curse? No. Narcissism is up to the individual person. Yeah. Narcissistic is, me first, egotism, that kind of stuff. That's up to individuals. Okay. Thank you so much for your comments and your questions, and thank you for being a part of Bible study on tonight. My prayer is that these studies help us in our daily life. Make the applications. Thank you for your prayers. Thank you for your support of Victory for the World Church. We need your support financially, and we need your prayers spiritually to continue to bring you this ministry. Let's pray, God, for another day, for another Bible study. We give you praise. We're thankful that we can read and listen and learn from the experiences, from the expressions, from the life, from the lives of these biblical characters, and then parallel our own lives and see how we can be better than we are and pass it along to future generations. We thank you and we bless you and we give you honor and praise. We love you. Bless Victory for the World Church and keep us in your care, in your service, and in your will. In Jesus' name, amen. God bless you, family. Till next time.